Mishra from India. Selamat siang Pak Profesor. Dan ada lagi, yaitu yang sebelah ujungnya adalah Profesor Ziran Zhu. He is, you know, he's from South Africa. He's he's professional in football. And last time I heard he's supported Spain, supporting German or Spain, I don't know. Or he gave Spain to be the winner. But today he's not talking about football, he's talking about public administration. I think that's also advice from the committee. We would like to start Professor Dr. Ram Kumar for your presentation. And we have only just limited time. I would like to have 15 minutes presentation, 15 minutes. It's a Swiss time, it's sharp, 15 minutes. And after that, continue to Professor Zhu and also Professor Kuye. Je vais inviter le professeur Kumar, Gregorius.
His Excellency Sultan Devinda, Mr. Mustafa, Professor Chu, Professor Kuye, esteemed participants. It's my pleasure to make a presentation to this august body on cultural aspects of administrative reforms in India. But before I do that, let me give you some peanuts of Indian culture, because we are talking of cultural aspects. The first tenet of Indian culture is Atma Deepo Bhava. We call it Devani. We talked of Bhasha. Before Bhasha came Sanskrit. Or Bhasha is a mix of Sanskrit. So we always talk Atma Deepo Bhava. Means you be your own guide. In the journey of life, you have to lead all by yourself. You have to be your own light. So this is the first principle, or the first tenet of the Indian culture. The second tenet of Indian culture is live and let live. And the entire world is one family. We call it Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. World is one, and we have to show oneness with the world. So we live in the Japanese model is again a bit different. In the case of Japanese model, we find that on the board we have not only the government nominees, we have not only the nominees of the enterprise, but we also have the nominees of the lending institutions. And this is the broad, way how the Japanese, boards they function. And let us come to the Indian perspective. And you find that Indian perspective works this way. In the case of Indian perspective, we see that there is a regulatory framework where there is a company law, there are takeover modes, there are disclosure requirements, and then there is a personality. An enterprise has its own personality, but then it has to work within the broader ambit of the law of the land. And you find that as a part of accountability, the accountability has been very clearly explained in the Companies Act, and the public sector enterprises there have to fulfill
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of the morning session. We'd like to kindly invite you to have lunch break at next workshop. We will start at 2:30 p.m. in both IAS workshops at IAS the gala dinner afterwards. Please kindly be present before 7 p.m. because the door will be closed on time. Thank you very much for your kind attention and understanding. Thank you.
Spirit. The second frame, which is probably more relevant and related to the first one, is the new public management. which, with its focus on the transfer of business and market principle and management techniques from the private into the public sector, symbiotic with and based on a neoliberal understanding of the state and economy. The goal basically is a slim, reduced, minimal state in which any public activity is decreased, if any, exercised according to the business principle of efficiency. New public management shares with standard economics textbook the quantification myth that everything relevant can be quantified, so qualitative judgment usually are not emphasized. So, in conclusion of this segment, this constellation of ideas and practices, again, are often applied without proper qualitative assessment of the context and the appropriate needed institutional and human and community resources and capabilities. I might argue that new public management worked even not so fully in countries that went through the traditional public administration and governance for a century or more. Here I refer to a personal experience in teaching in the Middle East. Recently, in the core course in public administration, I taught, I asked my student, after a historical review of the development of the field of public administration and the history or the stages of public administration system that existed, for the last, let's say, 2,000 years. I asked my students from 14 countries in the Middle East and North Africa to describe which models of public administration are prevailing in their governments. Whether it is the spoil system existed in the US and Europe 200 years ago, whether it's the traditional public administration since the 1900s, or the new public management since the 1980s. The majority of my students answer that it is a combination of the spoil system and the traditional public administration, with some light flavors of new public management here and there, mostly in the new agency that tend to operate outside the typical bureaucratic structure of government. Even in these so-called pockets of efficiency, they noted major problem of accountability and equity in compensation, access to network and partnership, and in spending, to mention just a few. So the assumption of the new public management, a market-driven mechanism, can work anywhere. So the assumption that they can work anywhere, anytime, is rather naive and simple, leaving any discussion of the importance and complexity of governance process irrelevant, shifting the discussion from good governance to efficiency as a goal in itself. This, obviously, as you could note in the last few years, brought disastrous effects not only in the industrialized, not only in developing countries, but actually more so in the industrialized developed countries. Let me turn now to some of the gaps or needs in public administration, education system and classrooms, particularly in developing countries. First, I noticed from my experience teaching in the US and moving and teaching in the Arab world that there is a lack of adequate focus on ethics and values of public service, critical and strategic thinking, social and institution analysis, and qualitative research and communication skills. This is relatively true also in developed worlds in the US and Europe. Many public administration programs generally focus on technical and managerial skills, which I argue can be learned at work or through on-job training. So the question here, quoting my professor and mentor Robert Denhart, is do we prepare students for their current or first jobs, or for those which they might inspire later and prepare them to be committed to public interest, regardless of what job they end up doing. Before teaching civil servant about technical skills, we may need to socialize them in citizenship, ethics, civic culture, governance values, and the meaning and purposes of government and society. Recently there was a survey conducted by NASPA in collaboration with the ICMA of 400 city managers in the US, and those managers indicated that ethics and integrity are the top category in the list of public service knowledge and skills. Another federal survey mirrored the city manager survey, that the skill most frequently identified are actually ethics and integrity in the public sector. From our program at the Dubai School of Government, I conducted a small survey after a student completed their study, and 90% of the students taking the introductory course in ethics, most of whom are middle managers with many years of experience, indicated to me and to other colleagues that it's their first time to take a course or training in ethics and public service values, such as equity and public good. What makes this finding more worrying is that most of those actually students are, sometimes middle or senior managers who are not only implementing policies, but actually making policies, especially in the region where there is no strong legislative branches of government. So basically, bureaucrats implement, at the same time also make those policies that they're implementing. So education and ethics and public values probably even more important in less developed, less democratic countries, which usually our students, even who study in the US and Europe, don't get really solid training in. I also conducted a survey of our MPA students who returned to their respective 14 countries last year, and the majority indicated that ethics and value class was the most important and memorable class they have taken. They also advised us to actually offer the course not only students of public administration, but actually to all public sector employees. Just imagine the difficulty of this task, and I also actually posed this question to the manager and directors of the Institute of Public Administration across the world who are responsible for training public sector employees. Second, there is also a lack of customized courses and training for students who are returning to countries that are non-democratic, as most Western education take the context usually for granted, and teach students of developing countries as if they are going to work in Western countries, and not focusing on how those students can navigate the conflict and challenges as they return home. For example, a recent study based on interviews with MPA students who graduated from the US and returned home, mostly to non-democratic and developing countries, show high level of stress, alienation, conflict between their personal and professional values, and work requirement and environment. So faculty as well as students ought to know something about comparative politics, conflict resolution, negotiation, and persuasion and communication skills. We may agree on what need to be added to our curriculum in the future, but can we agree on what needs to be reduced or eliminated? What I know is that many programs lack focus on political science, sociology and ethics, and basic understanding of the role, structure, task, and function and obligation of government and public official, principle of governance, social theory, ethics, values, public sector, civic culture, and comparative public administration. Another question regarding the future of public administration education is how can we maintain a set of standards like that's universal and applicable everywhere in a very diverse, fast-paced world where the contextual differences and development stages are many and changing. In spite of this seemingly stalemate, there seemed to be a consensus on several fundamental values and standards of excellence for public education and training, whose importance and values have been highlighted by actually the UN task force led by Alan, and also some of the remarks and recommendations made by NASPA. These include first, public service motivation and commitment in advancing public interest and building equitable, fair, transparent, participative institution before any really training in management and technical issues. Second, combining good scholarship and research and evidence gathering with practice and community service. Third, investing in and empowering faculty of public affairs and providing them with the needed resources to accomplish their mission in teaching excellence in public service. Fourth, inclusiveness and diversity and empowerment as important values in selecting students and also in teaching materials. Fifth, purposefulness, responsiveness, and adaptability of the curriculum without jeopardizing the underlying principle and values of public service education. Sixth, promoting the embeddedness of students within the community through applied research, internship, field visits, public opinion surveys, and voluntary work. The same thing can be said about the faculty and researchers. And I've seen the value of sending students to the field to conduct applied research in changing their views and attitudes towards issues affecting their communities. Finally, keeping some basic principle of public service clear and consistent, regardless of the influences of other school of thoughts and models in the school and public administration. And I emphasize the clear and consistency in the following area or values: equity, justice, inclusiveness, and effectiveness. There are other issues to be explored and emphasized here, but I would like to conclude here, and I would like to think that the future of public administration education is good and increasing in importance, especially in the last 3 years after the economic crisis. The value of public education should be communicated more and explained more effectively to government, students in high school and other schools, to also our communities, even to the private sector firms. MBAs, which is the Master of Business Administration program, dominated in the last 20 years, as even some governments around the world started to prefer business school graduate over public administrating graduate. For example, last time I looked at the Arab world, there are about 80 business administration graduate program in the Arab world and less than a dozen in public administration. This is really worrying. Things, however, are changing as some private sector managers started taking our MPA programs due to the recognition of the importance of political economy, public policy, and public bureaucracy in their work. This is a great opportunity to bring back the public service, citizenship, and civil culture values back into our classroom and our communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing with us your experience and the challenges of your region, Arab countries, and in regards to this education and what would be needed for the future. And I'm curious if there are any questions to this presentation directly now from the participants. Okay, so then we shall continue with the second speaker, who will share with you her experience from China. Mrs. Dong Yang, Chinese Academy of Chinese Academy of Governance. Sorry for the pronunciation of your name.
Share my experience with you about the Chinese Academy of Governors. And first of all, I will give you a very short brief about my responsibility and also my history. Now I'm in charge of the Department of International Affairs in Chinese Academy of Governors. And before that, I got my bachelor and also my master's degree is all on economics. And also 1.5 years ago, I worked in CAG. And before that, I worked in Ministry of Commerce for almost 20 years in China. And at that moment, I have do some management works on the export and import of the Chinese economy, and also I have do some recipient works of the official development assistance from the European countries and also other developed countries. And also I have negotiated with some European countries such as Iceland, Switzerland, and also Norway about the free trade. Also the vice chairman of IASIA, now in charge of the daily operation of our academy. Actually, we have 3 functions of our academy. The first one, training; the second one, consultation; and also the third one, scientific research on the public administration. So we have 26. Totally, we have 440 faculties